Being a monarch is a lonely thing. No one calls you, Queen Victoria once said. Perhaps that's why royalty have always turned to their most loyal companions, their pets. Creatures who asked for no title, expected no favour, and often remained by their side until their very last breath. In this video, we'll explore the most fascinating animals to ever live in royal courts. Which pets walked the halls of the Tudors? Which queen kept over 600 dogs? Which king had his own uncle executed, all because of a dog? And what was the most unusual animal ever to live in a palace? Get ready for many deeply touching stories of love between humans and animals in this video. Welcome back to Female Tales. I'm Yulia, and together on this channel, we explore the stories of remarkable women from history. If history speaks to you, like the video, join our community, and let's head straight into the depths of the past. Animals have been humanity's oldest companions, and naturally, they've been companions to kings and queens since the very beginning of royal history. Of course, in the distant past, animals were mostly kept for practical reasons. Horses for riding, dogs for hunting, or sometimes even as sacred creatures like cats in ancient Egypt, who were worshipped as part of religious life. But even so, across the depths of history, we still find stories where an animal became something more than just an animal. For example, we know the name of Alexander the Great's dog, Peritas, who fought beside him in battle. Alexander even named a city after him. We don't know the exact breed, though some believe the dog was a gift from a Caucasian ruler. And in fact, the tradition of kings gifting each other animals would continue throughout the centuries. Take Henry I of England, for example. He received so many exotic animals as royal gifts that he practically became the first person in the country to own a private zoo. It was located in Woodstock, and later, under Henry III, the royal menagerie was moved to the Tower of London. And over the next 6 centuries, the tower would house everything from leopards and lions to a white bear, and even a poor elephant who clearly did not enjoy the English climate. I wonder who shared a wall with Anne Boleyn when she was imprisoned in that very same tower by order of Henry VIII. By the way, the king of many wives, Henry VIII himself, was actually quite a dog lover. After his death, among his personal belongings, they found no less than 65 dog leashes, which is rather ironic, considering that his 2 favourite dogs, Cut and Ball, were constantly going missing. We know this because people who found and returned them to the palace were actually paid from the royal treasury, and the sum was truly princely, around 15 shillings, which would be a few £100 by today's standards. Back in Henry's time, only the nobility was allowed to own large dogs. In fact, there were actual dog rings in every region, and if your dog couldn't fit through it, you weren't allowed to keep it. Unless you were of noble blood, of course. Anne Boleyn too had a large greyhound, gifted to her by William Brereton, who, like so many others around Anne, would later be executed for allegedly having an affair with the Queen. The dog was named Urian, and once it even killed a cow. The crown had to pay compensation from the treasury. Still, Anne's most beloved little companion was a different dog entirely, a small lapdog named Pourquoi. Some sources say he was a Havanese Bichon, a breed known for its charming habit of tilting its head as if asking a question, which may explain the name Pourquoi, from the French pourquoi, why. Pourquoi was a gift from Honor, Lady Lisle, an ambitious woman who hoped to advance her family by staying in the Queen's good graces. She was also an avid court gossip, and nearly 3,000 of her letters have survived, which is how we know that Anne fell in love with the little dog almost immediately. Sadly, Pourquoi died in December 1534. According to Anne's lady-in-waiting, Marjorie Horseman, the little dog fell out of a window. The ladies of the court were so terrified of Anne's reaction, they asked the king himself to break the news to her. The Lisles, feeling partly responsible, offered her a new pet to cheer her up, possibly a monkey. At the time, monkeys were rare, fashionable, and very expensive. True symbols of high status. But Anne didn't like monkeys at all, partly because her rival, Catherine of Aragon, probably had one because it reminded her of home, of Spain. In a miniature by Lucas Hornbaugh, the royal painter, Catherine is actually shown holding her pet capuchin monkey. But over time, it seems that even Henry himself started to grow tired of all these little creatures running around the palace. Eventually, he issued an order. From now on, only small lapdogs were allowed at court. Breeds like toy spaniels or little bichons, the kind he gave as a New Year's gift in 1541 to his young fifth wife, Catherine Howard. Catherine later passed those very dogs on to Henry's fourth wife, the recently divorced Anne of Cleves. A similar little spaniel belonged to Henry's sixth and final wife, Catherine Parr. Her dog was named Rig, and the Queen absolutely adored him. She decorated him with a velvet collar in deep crimson embroidered with damask gold thread, and it even had gilded silver rings for the leash. This royal obsession with spaniels likely passed down to all three of Henry's children. His son, Edward VI, loved his dog so much that he had his own uncle executed after the poor animal was killed. Now, of course, it wasn't only about the dog, but the story goes that Thomas Seymour, Edward's uncle, tried to sneak into the young king's chambers one night, planning to take him away and place him under his control. But the dog started barking, loudly, so Seymour shot the dog to silence it. The noise woke everyone. A scandal broke out, and of course, Thomas was arrested, and not long after, executed. We don't know the name of Edward's brave little dog, but for a boy raised in isolation, losing that kind of friend must have been heartbreaking. Mary I, who inherited the throne after Edward, had several spaniels of her own, and even had them painted in an official portrait, sitting beside her and her husband. As you can imagine, having your portrait painted back then was a serious event, and we actually don't have that many portraits of Mary I to begin with. So choosing to have a beloved pet included in the painting was truly an act of love. As for her sister, Elizabeth I, spaniels were practically part of her medical routine. Her personal physician actually wrote that the Queen felt less abdominal pain when she was around her dogs. The lifelong rival of Elizabeth I, Mary, Queen of Scots, also had several pets who brought her comfort during the long years of imprisonment, which lasted nearly 19 years. And one of them even became her final consolation at the moment of her execution. Robert Wingfield, who was present at her death, wrote, "Then one of the executioners, pulling off part of her dress, espied her little dog which was under her clothes, which could not be gotten forth but by force, and afterwards would not depart from her dead corpse, but came and laid between her head and shoulders, a thing diligently noted. The dog, being imbrued with her blood, was carried away and washed, as all things elsewhere that had any blood, except those things that were burn." And perhaps, for Mary, in that final moment, it wasn't quite as frightening, knowing that something so close to her heart was still by her side. Perhaps dogs brought the same kind of comfort to the Romanovs, who were allowed to take their pets with them even into captivity. They had 3 dogs with them, a King Charles Spaniel named Jimmy, a bulldog named Ortino, and a Cocker Spaniel named Joy. These dogs kept the children entertained with their cheerful little games, even in the darkness of the Ipatiev house. And on that terrible night, between July 16th and 17th, 1918, Anastasia brought her dog Jimmy with her. He died in her arms. When the shooting started, Ortino got scared and began to howl, and he was shot too. Only Joy survived, only because he hid. And after it was all over, he stayed near the house for a long time, waiting, beside the place where his family and his little master Alexei had died. Joy was rescued by a supporter of the monarchy and brought to England. He was even once presented to King George V as the last living connection to the Romanov family. He was later buried in the gardens of Windsor Park. So if you ever happen to come across his grave, remember, there lies the joy of the Romanov family. I'm quite sure that after that last story, you're probably crying your eyes out, just like I did while working on this video. So now we need to lighten the mood a little, and this time I'll tell you a more cheerful story. And yes, this one is about cats. But for that, we'll need to travel to France. King Louis XV was a passionate lover of white Angora cats. He had one particularly large white Angora cat named Brilliant, who had his own red cushion, placed right on the mantel in the council room so he could sit and watch as the king and his ministers discussed the affairs of the kingdom. His grandson, though, Louis XVI, didn't share the same affection for cats. There's a story that one day Louis XVI went to the toilet, sat down, and suddenly felt something scratching and biting him in the most delicate of areas. he jumped up in panic, started ringing all the bells to call his servants, and discovered that a white Angora cat had settled inside the toilet bowl. So, that, it seems, was the reason for his lifelong dislike of cats. Fair enough. But Marie Antoinette actually loved them, and it's even possible that before the revolution, she sent a few of her beloved Angoras to America, along with some of her personal belongings, just in case she ever managed to escape. Still, the animal we most associate with Marie Antoinette is, of course, the pug. In the famous film about her life, there's a dramatic scene where she's forced to part with her pug. But don't worry. The Austrian ambassador, Mercier d'Argenteau, wrote to Empress Maria Theresa, explaining that Marie Antoinette loved dogs very much and had asked to be sent another pug from Vienna, this time a red one with a black nose. In that same letter, by the way, he dryly noted how untrained the dogs at court were, adding that in the Grand Couvert dining room, where the royal meals were held, there was already a hole scratched into the carpet, thanks to 2 dogs who had decided to redecorate. And well, since we're still in France, we really must mention the famous orangutan owned by Napoleon's wife, Josephine. Her name was Rose, and yes, sometimes they had dinner together, the 3 of them. Rose knew how to use cutlery and had a particular love for turnips. I have no idea what Napoleon thought of such dinner company, but well, what won't you do for the woman you love? Josephine also kept black swans, peacocks, llamas, and even kangaroos. But when it comes to royal figures, with the most animals in history, no one comes close to Queen Victoria. She had around 640 dogs over her lifetime, spanning 32 different breeds. And that's not even counting the Queen's other animals, like her horses, or the many creatures she was gifted over the years. But there was one dog who truly stood out in her heart. The very first and most beloved, a spaniel named Dash. Victoria was raised under the strict Kensington system, where her contact with the outside world was tightly controlled. So, the most loyal friend of her childhood became Dash, a dog who was originally gifted to her mother when Victoria was just 13, but very quickly became hers. She wrote in her diary, "Dear little Dashy is quite my playfellow." He followed her everywhere, quite literally, and once when she went sailing, he jumped into the water and swam after her. Dash stayed with Victoria even after she became queen, and after her coronation on June 28, 1838, she returned to Buckingham Palace, and the very first thing she did was run to her rooms and bathe Dash, just like she always did every evening. When he died at the age of 10, the Queen was deeply affected. On the gravestone of her beloved childhood friend, Victoria had the following words inscribed: "His attachment was without selfishness, his playfulness without malice, his fidelity without deceit, reader. If you would be beloved and die regretted, profit by the example of Dash." Such love for an animal didn't pass without a trace. For the rest of her life, Queen Victoria continued to support organisations that protected animal welfare. She personally granted the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals the right to call itself royal. She spoke out against tail docking and ear cropping in dogs, and, by the way, also against the widespread and often cruel use of muzzles. At her Golden Jubilee in 1887, the Queen commented that the growth of more humane feelings towards the lower animals over her lifetime brought her real pleasure. This care for animals was something her son, Edward VII, would carry on, along with his wife, Alexandra of Denmark. Alexandra, for example, was the first member of the royal family ever photographed with a cat. She also adored dogs, horses, and parrots. As for Edward, he had a deep bond with his little dog Caesar. Caesar wore a collar that read, "I am Caesar, I belong to the king." But Caesar outlived his master, and after Edward's death, he refused to eat. He was simply waited for him, in the king's bedroom. And during the funeral procession, Caesar walked right behind the coffin, following his beloved king one last time. The king's mistress and Camilla's great-grandmother Alice Keppel wanted to take the dog for herself, but Queen Alexandra personally cared for Caesar until the end of his days. On Edward's tomb, in St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, Caesar is still there, carved in stone, lying right by his king. And of course, when talking about royal pets, we simply can't ignore Queen Elizabeth II and her corgis. Her love for the breed started all the way back in childhood, when her father brought home their very first corgi, Dookie. She and her sister Margaret used to hand feed him, and in the family he earned the nickname a born sentimentalist. The princesses had one more rather unusual pet, a chameleon. It was a gift, brought back from overseas by Lord Mountbatten. They carried him around everywhere, and Margaret especially loved placing him on the cover of Debrett's, just to watch him turn exactly the same shade of red as the book's cover. On her 18th birthday, Elizabeth was given her very own corgi, Susan, and all of her future corgis were descendants of that very Susan. Over her lifetime, the Queen had more than 30 corgis. At one point, she even had to get a tetanus shot after she was bitten while trying to break up a fight between her own dogs. Another lifelong passion of hers was horses and racing, which for her was not only a form of entertainment, but also a rather profitable business. As if the Queen ever needed the extra income. And now, to finish, let's talk about probably the strangest pet ever kept by any human in history. His name was Lucius Licinius Crassus. Try saying that name 5 times fast. He was a Roman lawyer and politician. Not exactly royalty, but still. Crassus didn't just like eels, he loved them. He kept a pet eel in a private pond, and according to some accounts, he even decorated it with necklaces and earrings. And when it died, he was so devastated that he held an actual funeral for the fish. So next time you order a sushi with eel, just think. You might be eating someone's former best friend. Royal animals were not just loyal companions to monarchs. They were also small witnesses to history. And most importantly, they remind us that royals, just like us, are human too, and they loved their pets just as deeply. And if you don't have a pet yet, don't miss the chance to experience that kind of love at least once in your life. Even if our small friends don't live as long as we do, they're always worth it. Let me know which other royal pets you've heard about. And of course, tell me about the animals who share your life today. See you in the next video.